Hi, I'm Heidi Hansen, and I'd like to share with you a story that I've recently written entitled Neptune's Delight. Kyle, the hip young weatherman on Channel 2, drew his arm across the map. "We've got another cold front coming through," he said. "You got that right," Estelle said. She looked across the room where Earl slouched. Earl in that damn recliner. Estelle snuggled deeper into her nest of blankets and pillows on the couch. A gray cat nestled in the crook of her arm. The living room in their single-wide mobile home was no wider than 8 feet, no longer than 12, but the distance between Earl and Estelle exceeded the proportions of the room. Somewhere in their 28 years of bliss, they took a wrong turn. Just a week before in counseling, Estelle estimated that she and Earl had not spoken an unnecessary word to one another in 5 years, maybe longer. She couldn't answer the question of what started the Cold War. She guessed Earl didn't know either because he never mentioned it. The counselor suggested she keep records of their conversations. They had one that week when she asked if he had taken out the garbage. He grunted in an affirmative manner, so she jotted it into her notebook. Another time, he stuck out his tongue and gave her a raspberry as she watched Ellen. And then there was his response to a perfectly cooked steak she prepared for dinner. He belched. There was no intimacy in their life. She took to sleeping on the couch, he the recliner. Their marriage bed remained empty. She thought of it as a Mexican standoff since their last name was Sanchez. At the onset, they began racing each other to capture the bed, the loser taking his or her place in the living room. But as of late, they didn't seem to have the energy for that. Night after night, they waited out one another watching television. Sometimes she was too comfortable to get up and wrangle the remote from him when he fell asleep. She let the set rumble on till morning. The cat, Mr. Smoky, was the first to rise, insistent on being fed. She'd usually succumb to his demands and shuffle into the kitchen to open a can of cat food. Today, inside the cupboard, there were 2 cans, both labeled Neptune's Delight, a tasty seafood stew. She carried the cans to the counter and opened one, forking the contents into the cat's bowl. He twined through her legs as she prepared it, then he promptly lapped up every morsel. Estelle set the coffee to perk, pulled eggs and cheese from the refrigerator. She broke and whipped the eggs, then poured half the eggs into the pan. Carefully, she loosened the edges around them to cook thoroughly before dropping in cheese. After a minute, she slid it from the pan onto a plate and sprinkled more cheese on top. She poured the remaining eggs into the pan and called out to Earl, "Breakfast!" Then she opened the second can of cat food and spooned the contents onto his omelets. She deftly slipped the edges of the eggs over the filling and flipped the whole thing. Smiling, she salted both omelets and carried them to the table. Earl sniffed the air and rose from his recliner. He farted and headed to the bathroom. Estelle wondered if she should enter that into her journal, then took a bite of the omelet. "Yum," she said. "Cheese omelet, just like I like." She waited for Earl, ready with the journal and pen, to record his comments. Thank you for listening.